The moment Adiya Sharma stepped into the gleaming headquarters of Vantage Industries, she knew her life would never be the same. What she couldn't have predicted was how the cold, calculating eyes of CEO Aryan Malhotra would follow her every move, or how the man worth billions would risk everything he'd built to possess the one woman he was forbidden to have. Their story wasn't just about wealth and power, it was about the impossible choices we make when our hearts refuse to follow the rules society has written for us. If you're enjoying this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that will touch your heart and soul. Your support means everything to us. Adiya clutched her portfolio tighter against her chest as she navigated the intimidating lobby of Vantage Industries. The marble floors reflected her nervous expression back at her, making her feel even more out of place. At 26, she had finally landed an interview for her dream job as a creative director, but the weight of her family's expectations pressed down on her shoulders. Her father's recent heart attack had left the family drowning in medical bills, and this position was their only hope of staying afloat. "Miss Sharma?" A sleek assistant with a perfect bun and even more perfect posture approached her. "Mr. Malhotra will see you now." Adiya swallowed hard. Everyone knew about Aryan Malhotra, the 35-year-old self-made billionaire who had transformed a small tech startup into a global empire. His reputation for brilliance was matched only by rumors of his ruthlessness. She had prepared for weeks for this interview, but nothing could have prepared her for the man himself. When she entered his office, Aryan didn't look up immediately. He continued reviewing documents, his strong profile illuminated by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the Mumbai skyline. When he finally raised his eyes to meet hers, Adiya felt a jolt of electricity run through her body. His gaze was penetrating, as if he could see through the carefully constructed facade she had built for this interview. "So you're the design prodigy everyone's been talking about," he said, his voice deep and measured. It wasn't a question. "I wouldn't call myself a prodigy, Mr. Malhotra," Adiya replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Just someone who's passionate about creating meaningful work." Something flickered in his eyes, interest, perhaps, or surprise at her lack of intimidation. "Show me," he commanded, gesturing to her portfolio. As Adiya presented her work, she felt herself growing more confident. Design was her language, and when she spoke it, all her insecurities faded away. She didn't notice how Aryan's eyes kept returning to her face, or how his fingers lingered when he handed back her designs. "You're hired," he said abruptly when she finished. "My assistant will handle the paperwork. You start tomorrow." Adiya blinked in surprise. "Just like that?" "I don't waste time when I see something I want," he replied, his words carrying a weight she couldn't quite decipher. What Adiya didn't know as she left his office was that Aryan Malhotra had recognized her surname immediately. The Sharmas were distantly related to his family's oldest business rivals, the Kapoors. Generations ago, their families had sworn never to associate with each other after a bitter betrayal that had cost lives and livelihoods. By hiring her, he had already broken an unspoken rule that had governed his family for decades. But something about Adiya had made him willing to risk it all. The first few weeks at Vantage Industries passed in a blur for Adiya. Her creative vision quickly earned her the respect of her team, but it also brought her repeatedly into Aryan's orbit. Each meeting left her more confused than the last. He was demanding and exacting, yet sometimes she would catch him looking at her with an expression that made her heart race. One evening, as Mumbai's lights began to twinkle against the darkening sky, Adiya found herself alone in the office, working late on a crucial presentation. The soft click of expensive shoes against the floor alerted her to his presence before she saw him. "You should go home, Miss Sharma," Aryan said, leaning against the doorframe of the conference room. His tie was loosened, and for once, he looked almost human. "I need to finish this," she replied, gesturing to her scattered designs. "The work will still be here tomorrow." He stepped closer, and Adiya caught the faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something uniquely him. "You've impressed everyone here, you know. Including me." Adiya felt her cheeks warm. Thank you, Mr. Malhotra. Aryan, he corrected her. When we're alone, at least. The intimacy of his request hung in the air between them. Adiya knew she should maintain professional boundaries, but something about the vulnerability in his usually guarded expression made her nod. Aryan, she tested the name on her lips, not missing how his eyes darkened in response. That night marked a shift in their relationship. Aryan began finding reasons to work directly with Adiya on projects, their late-night collaboration sessions becoming a regular occurrence. They discovered a shared passion for art, literature, and the simple pleasure of chai on rainy evenings. Beneath his cold exterior, Adiya found a man haunted by expectations and family legacy, just as she was. What neither of them acknowledged was the growing tension that crackled between them whenever they were alone. It was during one such evening, as monsoon rain lashed against the windows, that everything changed. You never talk about your family, Aryan said as they reviewed marketing materials together. Adiya tensed. She had been careful to keep her family name vague in professional settings, knowing the history between their families. There's not much to tell. My father is recovering from a heart attack. My mother teaches classical dance. We're simple people. Sharma's from the Juhu area, connected to the Kapoors through your grandmother's sister, if I'm not mistaken, Aryan said casually, though his eyes were intent on her face. Adiya's breath caught. You knew? I knew before I hired you. The implication of his words hung heavy in the air. He had knowingly broken his family's code by bringing her into his company. Why would you risk that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Aryan moved closer, his usual composure slipping. Because from the moment I saw your work, saw you, I knew some rules were meant to be broken. His hand reached out to touch her cheek, and Adiya knew she should pull away. Their family's feud, their professional relationship, the power imbalance between them, everything screamed that this was forbidden. Yet when his lips finally met hers, she found herself responding with a passion that matched his own. That kiss changed everything and nothing. In private, they fell deeper into a relationship that consumed them both. In public, they maintained a careful distance, aware of the consequences if their secret was discovered. Aryan began helping Adiya's family anonymously, paying off her father's medical bills through a series of grants that couldn't be traced back to him. For 3 blissful months, they existed in their private bubble. But secrets in Mumbai's elite circles rarely stay hidden for long. The annual Vantage Industries Gala was the social event of the season. Adiya attended as part of the creative team, wearing a midnight blue sari that Aryan had sent to her apartment with a note that simply read, "To match your eyes." They had agreed to maintain their professional distance throughout the evening, but neither could help the lingering glances exchanged across crowded rooms. What they didn't know was that Aryan's mother, Nandini Malhotra, had noticed these glances. A formidable woman who had protected the family's interests since her husband's death, she had also done her research on the promising new creative director who had caught her son's attention. As the evening progressed, Nandini cornered Adiya near the terrace doors. "Miss Sharma, isn't it? Your work has been quite the talk of the industry." "Thank you, Mrs. Malhotra," Adiya replied, trying to hide her nervousness. "That means a lot coming from you." "Does it?" Nandini's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I wonder what else might mean a lot to you. My son's attention, perhaps? Or is it his fortune you're more interested in?" Adiya felt as though she'd been slapped. "I don't know what you're implying." "Let me be clear, then. The Sharmas and the Malhotras do not mix. Your grandfather's betrayal cost my husband's brother his life. That blood debt has never been settled." Nandini's voice was low but sharp as a blade. "Whatever game you're playing with my son ends tonight, or I will ensure your entire family suffers the consequences. Your father's health is precarious, I understand. It would be a shame if his recovery was interrupted." The threat left Adiya cold with fear. Before she could respond, Nandini glided away, leaving her trembling on the terrace. Later that night, when Aryan called her, Adiya didn't answer. Nor did she respond to his messages the next day. When she finally returned to work, she requested a transfer to the company's branch in Delhi, citing family reasons. She avoided Aryan entirely, ignoring his attempts to speak with her privately. Her heart was breaking, but the fear of what Nandini might do to her family was greater than her own pain. What she didn't count on was Aryan's determination. After a week of her avoidance, he appeared at her small apartment unannounced, his usual polished appearance disheveled. "You don't get to disappear without an explanation," he said as soon as she opened the door, pushing past her into the living room. "Your mother made the explanation quite clear," Adiya replied, her voice hollow. "She knows about us, Aryan. And she threatened my family." Aryan's expression darkened. What exactly did she say? As Adiya recounted Nandini's threats, she watched Aryan's face transform from anger to determination. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "Listen to me, Adiya. The feud between our families is based on lies. My uncle didn't die because of your grandfather's betrayal. He died protecting your grandfather from my father's business partners. The truth was covered up because it implicated powerful people." Adiya stared at him in shock. "How do you know this?" "I found my uncle's journals after my father died. He documented everything." Aryan's grip on her hands tightened. "Our families aren't enemies, they were allies who were torn apart by greed and politics. My mother doesn't know the truth. She's been living with a lie for decades." The revelation shook Adiya to her core. Everything she thought she knew about her family history was suddenly in question. "Even if that's true, your mother will never accept me." "I'm not asking for her permission," Aryan said firmly. "I'm asking for your trust. Give me time to prove the truth to her, to everyone." That night marked the beginning of their fight to rewrite history. Aryan began the painstaking process of gathering evidence from his uncle's journals, tracking down witnesses who had remained silent for decades, and building a case that would exonerate Adiya's grandfather. Meanwhile, Adiya faced her own battle at work. Rumors about her relationship with the CEO had begun to circulate, and many colleagues assumed she had slept her way to her position. Rather than retreating, she threw herself into creating the most innovative campaign the company had ever seen, determined to prove her worth through her work alone. Their separation during this time was painful but necessary. They limited their contact to brief, professional interactions, both aware of the watchful eyes around them. Nandini increased her presence at the office, clearly monitoring her son's behavior and Adiya's movements. The turning point came 3 months later, at the company's board meeting. Aryan had prepared a comprehensive presentation about the company's future direction, with Adiya's campaign as the centerpiece. As the board members and major shareholders gathered, including Nandini, tension filled the room. Halfway through Aryan's presentation, the doors opened to admit an elderly man supported by a walking stick. A collective gasp went through the room as people recognized Vikram Kapoor, the patriarch of the Kapoor family and the supposed architect of the betrayal decades ago. "I apologize for the interruption," Vikram said, his voice stronger than his frail appearance suggested. "But when Aryan told me about today's meeting, I felt it was time to set the record straight." Nandini rose from her seat, her face pale. "What is the meaning of this, Aryan?" "The truth, mother," Aryan replied calmly. "Something our family has been running from for too long." What followed was a painful unraveling of decades of lies. Vikram Kapoor revealed how Aryan's uncle, Rajiv Malhotra, had discovered that his own brother was involved in illegal arms dealing. When Rajiv threatened to expose the operation, he was killed by the same partners who then framed Vikram for the murder. The Kapoor family had been scapegoated to protect the guilty parties, some of whom were still on Vantage Industries' board. As evidence was presented, old photographs, letters, and finally, Rajiv's journals, the room descended into chaos. 2 board members abruptly left, their guilt apparent in their hasty departure. Nandini sat frozen, decades of hatred crumbling under the weight of truth. When the dust settled, Aryan stood tall, his gaze finding Adiya at the back of the room. For years, our families have lived with a lie that kept us apart. I refuse to let that lie dictate my future, our future, any longer. In that moment, with all eyes on them, Aryan crossed the room and took Adiya's hand in his. The gesture was both a declaration and a question. Adiya, her heart pounding, squeezed his hand in response. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The aftermath was not easy. Nandini retreated to the family's ancestral home to process the revelation that her hatred had been misplaced for decades. Several board members resigned as investigations into the old crimes began. The media had a field day with the story of the star-crossed business families. Through it all, Aryan and Adiya stood firm. Their relationship, no longer hidden, became a symbol of reconciliation and truth. Adiya's campaign launched to critical acclaim, cementing her reputation as a creative force independent of her relationship with Aryan. And slowly, the wounds between the families began to heal. 6 months after the board meeting revelation, Aryan took Adiya to the rooftop garden of Vantage Industries headquarters. The Mumbai skyline glittered around them as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "This is where I first realized I was falling in love with you," Aryan said, leading her to the edge where the city spread out below them. "You were presenting your first major concept to the executive team. Everyone else saw a brilliant design. I saw the woman I wanted to spend my life with." Adiya smiled, remembering that day. "I was terrified. I thought you hated every idea I presented." "I was terrified too," he admitted. "Terrified of what I was feeling for you, of what it meant for everything I thought I knew about my family, my life." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "The past few months have taught me that sometimes we have to tear down everything we thought was true to build something authentic. Something real." Aryan dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring with a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, the deep blue matching the color of the sari she had worn the night of the gala. "Adiya Sharma, will you help me build a new legacy? One based on truth and love, not hatred and lies?" Tears filled Adiya's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. As Aryan slipped the ring onto her finger, she finally found her voice. "From forbidden to forever," she whispered, echoing the phrase that had become their private mantra during the difficult months. Their kiss, witnessed only by the setting sun and rising stars, sealed a promise that had begun in secrecy but would continue in the open, breaking the chains of a past that had tried to keep them apart. 1 year later, as Adiya walked down the aisle toward Aryan, both families stood together, the decades-old feud replaced by a tentative new alliance. Nandini Malhotra, after months of soul-searching, had finally embraced the truth and, more slowly, her future daughter-in-law. Vikram Kapoor, his health improved now that the burden of false guilt had been lifted, proudly gave Adiya away. Their wedding was more than a union of two people, it was the healing of a wound that had festered for generations. As they exchanged vows, Adiya and Aryan knew that their love story would become part of both families' legacies, a reminder that even the most forbidden love could triumph when built on honesty, courage, and anew.